Well, good evening, everybody. It is July the 6th. We are talking about real estate. We're talking about Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads. I am so excited because I get to talk to you guys and I got some good stuff to share with you. Um, Welcome to the evening. It's 8 o'clock Eastern time, and wherever you're watching from, hope you're having a great morning, midday, evening from wherever you are. And if you do want to share where you're from, please comment in the chat next to the screen. So you can throw in comments. You can throw in any sort of information, questions you've got. I will be able to answer any questions from you this afternoon or evening. You can throw them in the chat, and also we'll be talking a lot about information that's happening in the real estate market. Oh my gosh, things have happened in the last couple of weeks. And I was getting a sense, a little bit of a feeling as to what was going on in the last couple, 2-3 weeks. But then when data started coming in, I started getting more of a firm belief system for the next several months. And I have I'd say some assessments, some advice I can give to you, and some predictions, I think, as well, based on what I'm seeing in this new information that's coming in June. So sometimes, right now you might think, well, I'm hearing a lot of stories about the market shifting, the market turning around. Is the market crashing? Is it correcting? What's going on with the real estate market in Hampton Roads specifically? That is the narrative right now. Is you keep hearing stories about the shift, the turnaround. And then if that is happening, how far is the turnaround going to continue for? Could it be for a couple of months and then it recovers? Could it be for a couple of years? Could this be like a reversal or a revisiting of 2008? So there's a lot of variety here, but I want to get into some specifics about the market and the stats. And if you have questions, please let me know. So I've got a lot of information to cover, starting with some information of the June statistics in the Hampton Roads real estate market. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you in terms of the south side of Hampton Roads, which includes Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Suffolk, and Norfolk. And then also juxtaposing that with the peninsula, which includes Newport News, Hampton, Poquoson, going up to York County, James City County, Williamsburg, that whole area as well. It will have two different charts, essentially, with different statistics that tell a story about the south side and the peninsula, because the prices and the information about those different areas are different. So it's worth separating those two. So I'm going to share my screen. I've loved doing that recently, if you've not been able to tell in my recent videos. But I'm going to talk to you first about the south side and show you the median sales price of a house, detached single family house in the south side of Hampton Roads in June. Here it is $360,000. And so this includes all those cities. But if you notice, June, July, well, let's start first in February. February is $325,000. That's the median sales price. So that of all the house sales prices, that's the middle sales price in Virginia Beach. And so if you notice that it went up pretty quick, like 3% up into March, into February, into April, going backwards in the months. April, 356. And if you notice, eventually you start seeing May and June the exact same price. So what would that be looking like? Looks like the top. And so take that as a side note. I'm going to show you another screen. If I can switch it over to, you see this? Can't see that yet. I'm going to switch it up and share with this. Still learning this, guys. There we go. So here is the peninsula numbers. So if you see 338, first of all, 338,500 for median sales price in June. That's actually up from 320 in May. So that leads me to one thing: is the data that you see on a month-to-month basis is not always, granularly speaking, accurate enough to see what a trend looks like for a larger time period. Because you see a lot of, like, for example, in May and in June, the prices have gone up. What does that mean, though? What that means is the sales price means that's closed houses. So what this is showing is two things. One is the closed price in the peninsula was a purchase in May, most of them, which is when the busiest time of the end of the, I'd say the busiest time of the year was. So if you go back to the other screen talking about the south side, now this not only showed the top, but it's been the same for 2 straight months. Well, that tells you there's a good chance that in June, in last month, in June, houses that are going under contract are actually going less than 360, probably in the 350s range. So we're starting to see a turnaround as far as median sales price is concerned. So I'm going to also switch over to median days on market. Interesting story there too. See this thing here. You see 9 days on the market. Interesting because that has actually gone up every month since April in the south side. 9 now. Doesn't mean a whole lot, but it's showing a turnaround. Same goes, I'm going to shift over back to, let's go back to the peninsula. The peninsula is showing similar things, but we're going to show 10 days on the market. So as you can see too, in general, the south side sells a little bit faster than the peninsula, but you're noticing the same kind of trend. It's bouncing upward. So well, that's why I want to bring you to a general pattern in the market every year that I think is worth attributing to this year, so you can start thinking for yourself to say, how is the market in June influencing, like how similar to other past years is 2022, and is this an indication of anything that might change going forward? Well, let's go back to, I'm going to show you the south side because I think that tells the best story. And if you look to the south side's not just median days on market. I'm going to go back to median sales price. You notice something here. If you look at the highest price, closed house price in every year, going back to really almost every year, I'd say just about every year. Yeah, even before the boom in 2005, 6. Every year, the highest closing sales price is usually from either June or July, and then except for the COVID year. That was just a weird year. But if you look at that, it's almost to me like all the people's plans got pushed back a few months. But let's look at that. June, July, highest numbers in 2019. June, July in 2018. June, July in 2017. June, July, and it bounced down in 2016. So you notice a pattern here. It even goes up June, July. Every year, June, July is usually the highest sales price, closed sales price of the entire year, and then it goes down every year. So 2 things. First of all, June, July, this, for the first time in a while, the June and July time period, those 2 months might not be, and will likely not be, the highest sales prices in the given year. The highest this year is May and June. It kind of ended a little bit earlier. My theory there is because as interest rates were low, and people knew that they were going up, I think people accelerated their purchases in the early part of the year, which made the demand for housing in the June time period less, or example, even May time period in this case, less, because people had bought in April, in March, to make sure they got their interest rates locked in. That's part of my theory. But if you notice, so my point here is to say that you're going to start seeing a downturn. And I think it's going to come faster than this graph is indicating. And I think it's going to drop relatively quickly. But that leads me to something else, is to say that every year, looking at June, July. If you look between, let's just use an example, 2018 in June, 2017, or July of 2018, 275 is the sales price. Going down, the lowest sales price median in that year was 250 in 5 months later, which in and of itself is almost 10%. So the median sales price in the same year dropped 10%. This is before the market shot up, 10%, almost 10% that year. And it does about the same every year. It drops about anywhere from 5 to 15% every year. So that is to say that what people will start doing, and that's just already happening, is you'll see videos about the crash, videos about what's happening with the market. Oh my gosh, this is doom and gloom. We're going to talk about all the, people are freaking out. This happens every year. Markets are going to correct every year. So every year you can expect, even in 2020, 2021, the market drops. Now, it didn't drop as much last year. So 2006 and 7, May, June, July. In 2021, it was in the upper 330s, and the lowest was 321, which is only about 4%. So, but in general, if we're going back to what I would consider a typical market, you can expect a 5 to, I'd say, 15% drop in median sales price from the top of that sales price range in the middle of the year to the bottom of that range at the end of the year. So if that is the case now, my guess is if this becomes a pretty relatively, I'd say healthy is not the right word right now, but a more typical, close to typical market, what's 10% of 360? 36,000. That means that the sales prices in December might be in the 324 range, down in here. It could be in the 330s. It might drop below that. Now, why? Here's the X factor. We don't know what's going to happen in the next few months. And what is that? That is mortgage interest rates are incredibly high right now relative to what they were in about a couple months ago, or not even. I'm going to show you a graph. I'll show you a graph there we go. All right. I'm going to show you something to give you an indication as to what to expect over the next several months, or at least how unique this time is. This is interest rates on average every year for the last, 40 years, right? Okay, so right now we're in 2022. The average right now is still 4.32, and these are monthly average commitment rate in points on 30-year fixed since 71. So all that really means is that it's commitments when a lender is committing a loan to somebody. What rate is that? So this is not something to take and say, well, this is going to be my rate. You could go to different lenders and go to get different rates. That's not what this is, but it's to show you an indication of an aggregate of the general market. So in May, we don't have the numbers yet for June, but in May, the monthly average was 5.23%. I'm going to try and zoom in on that so you can get a little bit closer. 5.23% in May. Well, what's crazy is January, 3.45. So in a matter of just 4 months, it went up almost 2%. And in June, I'm guessing it's probably closer to 5.5, 5.75 wouldn't surprise me. And I think that as the Fed increases their rates, which we keep hearing 0.75%. We don't really know for sure how or when, but this number could be in the mid to upper fives, and we could see it being in the sixes before too long. And so what does that mean? Well, first of all, one thing I can show you is that every year, and I've gone back every year since 71, and I've looked, there has not been a year with an interest rate increase in the same year over about 1% since this past year. Look at this, 2.96, 3.11, every year it's gone up or down, but not by that much. And even when the market had started correcting down in 2008, it was at 6.03%, and that was 2008 right there. And then they started dropping. The biggest drop was about 1% on average. 2007 was 6.34. Before that, 6.41. So you see, even before the market bumped up in 04, 05, we're talking upper 5%, and it had not gone up or had not changed or fluctuated too much. This is the first time we've seen an interest rate change of this much, this fast. We went from the historical lows to 15-year highs in a matter of 5 months. That is going to be something you cannot predict statistically as to what will happen. And so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to just talk to you specifically. There we go. So we don't know what that's going to do in the market, right? We know that historically the market always drops in the fall, late summer, in the fall, but it always increases, generally speaking, in the spring and summertime, early summertime. But we don't know that based on how many people that could have been qualified to buy something 4 months ago or 2 months ago now can't buy that same house now. So people have asked me stuff like, well, should I buy a house now? Should I wait 6 months? Should I buy a house at all? all of these questions are not only valid, but the answers are very personal to you. I am not one to say buy a house regardless. That's not my thing. I don't want people to just buy a house just because other people have said to buy a house. I do believe in the long-term benefit of ownership and buying a house and owning it for a long period of time, because eventually as you own that property, you do build the equity. The question then is, well, am I going to get equity now, or am I going to buy into something that's too high? Well, I understand that. That's where it comes into the longer you keep the house, the better, the longer and the more equity you will be able to build. But in the short-term fluctuation, it might not feel good if you get a house that's 350 or 450 or 550 or whatever, $1 million, 1.2, and it drops another 10%, 15, 20%, which again, every year it drops. Is based on what the demand is for a house, like whatever the person buys in that particular period of time. So you have to be prepared for that. So that's, you got you have that mixed in with the interest rates, and that's where it gets interesting, because what I mentioned before, if your interest rate is 5.75% and you get a house for $500,000 right now at 5.75%, let's say your payment is $3,200. I actually am doing this off the top of my head. Do not quote me on this. Don't get me in trouble. But I will say too that as you get over 6.5, the 6.75 number to 6.5, I should have shown you a slide, but I don't have a slide because I didn't come prepared for this specific number. But if you go up at about, let's just say 1%, that percent increase is, I'm going to say about $300 a month, $250, $300. So $300 a month. What does that mean for if you have a house that's 500,000 and now that house becomes 470? Well, if you think to yourself, I'm going to wait 30 and save $30,000 and buy that house. In about 4 or 5 months, when you might be able to do that, there's a good chance you might be able to do that. You might be paying a higher interest rate for that, which leads to potentially a higher monthly payment, even with that mortgage reduction. So then the pivot can lead to, well, I'll just refinance later. That is very true. That's very valid. What you're basically gambling on is buying either now with a lower rate in the hopes of it not going down as much, because maybe you shouldn't have done it. Or if you do buy at a lower price and then refinance, what we're expecting then is for the rates to drop. And we have to drop those rates at least another percent to justify refinancing to at least break even, in my opinion, in that 1% range at least. So if you get a house at 6.25 and then want to refinance, you have to really, to me, hope you have to get 5.25, 5% or less in order to really justify doing that. And then again, back to the stats about how many times in history has the aggregate average commitments for interest rates for mortgages been, how often have they gone up or down more than 1% over the course of a year? And the answer is, until now, no more than 1%, I think, ever. So it could take 2-3 years or more to do that. So if you're going to buy, my suggestion is I would still consider doing it in the next 2 or 3 months if you want to, if you're in that mindset of wanting to buy. But again, I never like to gamble on the idea of interest rates. So that's why I'm thinking in those terms. I'm not sure where I think the interest rates can go up to. I've heard all kinds of stories. I've heard them that they might go down. We don't really know, and that's the thing. But I do think that we'll see prices drop, but I think that we'll also see rates go up. And I think that if you buy that same house, it's going to feel like you got a deal, but you might not have gotten as much of a deal because you're paying so much more in interest. So let me go back to let me read some of your comments. And I'm going to go back to some statistics. Isaiah, watching from the Eastern Beach Shore Drive. Awesome. Just moved here. I hope you love it. I love East Beach. I love Shore Drive. I love restaurants along Shore Drive. What are your favorite ones? Have you gone to any of them yet? Or am I just asking too many questions up front? I don't even know. But East Beach is great. Big fan of that corner. The Turn is a great neighborhood right across the street from there. That walking distance to the beach, all that area, I'm a big fan of. But tell me your favorite and least favorite things about the area. I'd love to know, especially from somebody, A, coming from a totally different area, and B, just coming here and just the initial reaction of what it's like to be in Ocean View and Norfolk and Hampton Roads. Burn! Yes! Thank you, Burn. I hope it's Born or Courtney. I'm assuming it's Burn. I'm looking at Burn's picture. I love all the people predicting this, and then when this really has never happened before. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing that I guess everybody wants to be the genius, right? But who among us really know? And so I'm taking my best guess. And again, I think anybody that tells you what is going to happen and is very confident about it, and then tells you based on that, I think they're full of it, and I think they need to check themselves. So let me go back to showing you some more statistics of the. Show you how to stream here. Go back to. I'm going to next show you the month's supply of houses on the market right now in both Virginia Beach, the Hampton Roads area, South Side and Peninsula. So month supply, what does this mean? I get irritated when the agents talk about what month supply means, because no one really talks about it, explains this very well. And I might stink at this too, but the point of month supply, and this why this is so important, is it shows the amount of houses that there are available for people to buy. Meaning that if it says right there, month supply, how many months it would take to sell through the available inventory at the current sales rate? Well, and the answer, the lower the number, it means the less the amount of supply. And you can see in terms of averages, 4 to 5 months worth of inventory is a pretty average, generally speaking, I'd say healthy market. You can have an unhealthy market with that same number, but still my point is the list is very low. But what also, to me, throws this number off is that you'll have a lot of listings that are either way too high priced, or they're extremely distressed, or they need a bunch of repair. And so you could say, well, it'll take 1.3 months to sell all the listings. Well, I'm real technical about this stuff. I'm like, it's not really true, because they're not all going to sell. Anyway, that's just my own issue. But if you notice something here, the month supply bounces up. June, 1.3. And last year, June went down to 1. If you notice too, even then, June 2020 went down. And before then, June actually kind of went stagnant and went down again. And then the year before that, June was lower than May. June was usually the lowest point of the inventory for a given year, especially recently. But what's happened? The opposite, 1.3 instead of 1.1. Now it's 20% higher. Doesn't mean much with a number that low, but this is abnormal for what we've seen recently, which is also an indication of the turnaround of the market. And I think that we could see this. We could see inventory. I'm guessing this is going to bounce back up into the 2s range as we get into the fall, because a lot of times what happens is, and this is happening now, there are people that I know that have been planning to sell. They talked about selling in March. They talked about selling in April. Talked about selling in May. Now we're into July, and now it's like, well, now I want to sell. And now it's me and a bunch of other people that thought the exact same thing, and they're putting their houses on the market at the exact same time. So that means that anybody that does that they're all competing with each other with a new version of the new market, of the new vibe, the new pattern of the new market. And so I would say that's part of the reason why you're going to see the inventory increase in the fall months, because people are going to still say, well, it's the houses I can sell in the fall. The price of that house is still going to be more than what I could have sold it for last year and the year before that, which is generally true. But if too many people start putting their houses on the market, and because supply is the main thing that we're suffering with right now, is lack of supply. As the supply increases, we're starting to see the buying power of people drop. And so we're seeing this happen. We're seeing this. And eventually the supply is going to exceed the demand, and we'll start seeing an actual shift in the market. But until then, it's still going to be, prices are going to be still relatively high. And so that's why you can't also take the idea of, well, prices are lower, I can offer lower. That's not the way it always works. So there are some dynamics here, and I'll put a pin on that. I'm going to tell you the dynamics of the prices or the how to strategize in this kind of a market and what people are going to be planning for in a minute. I'm going to go back to the comments. Carla's Beach House. Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. Any comments about there? Very cool. The area you like East Beach. Tammy, should we wait to purchase a condo or townhouse if we're in the budget of $250 with these high rates? So with a condo, another thing to mention, and I don't know if this is what you were alluding to, is that with condos, you usually have a higher interest rate than buying a single family house. So if you want to keep your interest rate lower, you might find townhouse might be the move if you want to buy right now. In my opinion, The lower the price range, I would suggest getting something sooner rather than later. The higher the price range, I'm less focused on doing something now, and not because it's whatever. Like, at a $800,000 price, they can deal with it. That's not what I'm saying with the 250. You know what I'm saying? But my point is, with 250, sometimes the barrier of entry into real estate is the toughest leap in, and so to get that, if it's the first house in the area or like a kind of manageable house in the $200-300 price range, that's the area that I've seen the largest gap between who could afford a house in January and who can afford a house in June. It was really wide. I know someone that was looking to buy a house back in it would have been January, condo at it's about 200 to actually it's about 215 in January. Now that house that they were trying to buy, they can't buy anymore because they now are going to buy. They're buying now in June, and they have to now pivot to a different house, different location, different neighborhood. And the neighborhood differences in that 2 to 250 range can be a bit more drastic than a 5 to 550 or 7 to 750, if that makes sense. So if it were me, I would be more focused on getting something sooner rather than later. If you're going to be keeping the house for a while, again, if you're buying it and in a year you're planning on leaving and also selling, I wouldn't do that. I don't think I would do that. But if you're going to be, it's all relative, right? Again, it's still considered it's high relative to what it was. It's still, I'm not convinced that they're going to go down too much anytime soon. So that's where I'm thinking, if you go back to, if you wait 3 or 4 years to refinance or however long, if the house prices could be higher anyway. You could have actually, that's not true. You could, that would be the benefit too. Yeah. I talked myself into the idea of maybe wanting to refinance, but I think I lean more towards still buying sooner just because I don't like gambling on the interest rates, especially in the price range. But again, if you're in the 6 or 7 price range, I probably would not be as adamant about that, if that makes sense. Yep. Oh, Baron, San Diego. I was considering the idea of going there this year, and I would have obviously hit you up, but great to hear from you, Bern. I will also hit you up outside of this. Tammy, look in West Point, VA, new construction townhomes. Yes. Okay. So good point. The Southwest family. I'm not sure what area, Tammy, you're looking for, but West Point, it's much further north. I'd say about an hour and 15 minutes. Family, correct me if I'm a little bit off there. But you can get a little bit cheaper prices in there for new construction up there. Now watch some of the builders. You can check reviews as to what you like and don't like there. But yeah, I mean, that's one pivot option as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope these are bringing you value. Tammy Schultz, you're welcome, Tammy. And Scott Brewer, Halifax, cool. Never been to Halifax, I don't think. Been to Massachusetts several times. My family's in Maine. My mom's side is Bangor. Do townhomes appreciate the same or slower than single-family homes? Answer is they appreciate, I would say, generally speaking, a little bit slower, but generally speaking, slower. It depends on where. It depends. There are some spots that won't. But in general, here's the thing. If you buy townhouse, single-family house, same price, 2 totally different experiences. So it's hard to put these two in a vacuum and say, oh, well, townhouses don't appreciate like single family houses do. In the right townhouse, you could find a townhouse appreciating more than a single family house in some cases. But I think in general, I'm all about trying to find a detached house if you can, based on demand. But I'm almost as interested in the specs of the townhouse compared to the specs of the single family house, and also what your plan is for the house. So if you plan on doing like a townhouse and then rent it, that to me makes more sense, even if you might not think the appreciation might not be as high compared to a detached house in the same city. But it's not so different enough to where I would say that you should pick detached over a townhouse or vice versa, because again, that's back to the idea of, if you get a detached house just because of one variable, but you don't like where you're living, was it worth it at all? And was it worth it to get that extra appreciation? You know what I mean? So that's why I look at the totality of the purchase, not just the actual dollars and cents of it. How do you enjoy the house? Tammy Schultz, Tammy, yeah, Virginia Beach or Chesapeake only. Okay, so going back to before, I would say if it were me, I still would focus on buying sooner than rather than later. And again, even if you go into the 5s and 6s and 7s, prices are still, they're not selling that much. It's more so when you get over $1 million. $1 million, you're seeing a distinct, drastic difference in length of time on market. But even in the 5s and 6s and 4s, the demand there is pretty high. So I guess I would say, in general, I would still say the townhouse condo, I'd say still get it now if you can, as well as single family in all the price ranges up to about $1 million. I just would be more particular about the house once you get over that million-ish range. But Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, I would focus as much as you can on townhouse. There are some townhouses that have low condo fees or low HOA fees that I like a lot. But again, for example, you could be in an area called Riverwalk that has a townhouse neighborhood in there around the 250s range that I know someone just moved in there recently. And it's for the price, great. There are some others as well, but and if you could even pivot to a 2-bedroom, not sure how much space you need, but great spots like there's neighborhoods over in Indian Lakes, over off of Providence Road near Kempsville Road. As you go up into near Thalia, across the Virginia Beach, Town Center. On the other side of that, north of that, there's some townhouse neighborhoods over there that are in the 260, 250 range. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, I would say now rather than later, I say the next 2-3 months if you can. Scott Brewer, any updates on short-term rental laws in W. Berg in Virginia Beach? Nothing that I'm aware of recently, as say in the last few weeks, Virginia Beach. However, Norfolk has made some adjustments to what they require and what they allow for short-term rentals. So you can now do, I think it's apartments up to 24 units. You can do short-term rentals in Ocean View, so specifically Ocean View, as well as I think there's a couple of criteria that they require if you do have a building or unit that is multiple units or higher. You have to have a couple of different additions to that unit, but nothing that I know of yet with Virginia Beach or Williamsburg. However, Virginia Beach, there's been that battle for the last few years about what you can and can't do, where you can and can't go. I'll look into that and make sure I'm up to date on that. I've not watched any city council meetings in a little while also, because it was so interesting, especially as they were trying to figure out what in the world to do with short-term rentals. But as of now, I've not seen too much, but I'm still not one to suggest buying a house in Virginia Beach unless you're right near the beach in a couple of specific overlay areas. They call them overlays, or most of Hampton Roads, unless you are prepared for the laws to change for short-term rentals to the negative. It could happen. Right now, I'm seeing Norfolk has been pretty reasonable so far, as well as Hampton in like the Buckrow Beach area is a great spot still right now, I think, to consider short-term rentals. So I think of the area, I like those two. Also because for the price, you can get some good property to short-term rent, and also the price, and you're close to the beach. So it's kind of a nice combination over there. So Carlo, but nothing otherwise in Williamsburg either yet, as well, Scott. What area in Virginia Beach is the best place to start searching for townhouses 2 to 250? Well, I hope I didn't just answer the question without realizing it, but I love parts of Kempsville. I love 2-bedroom parts of Kempsville. I love, let's see, even going towards Thalia. I mentioned Thalia. Let's go into, there are some even condos in town center as well. Indian Lakes. I like that whole area. Just had a big boom of townhouses in that price range, or in that time period, like in the 80s, 70s, sometimes into the 90s. You see a lot of those, and so that I do like those areas for that reason. You'll see some as you go into even over into the further into the east side of Princess Anne Road. There are a couple of neighborhoods there in that low to mid 200s price range that I think could also work fine. But I like, for the price, I keep talking about Kempsville a lot. I'm not sure how important school district is for people right now, but you know, school district in general obviously is generally speaking a big deal. But for the demand of school districts in the area, there are a lot of places that are ranked real high that make the others look pretty low. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt to a certain extent, but I'm a big fan of Kempsville and the areas around Kempsville because of the price. You can get a nice house in a nice area for what you get, and for the accessibility to the rest of the Hampton Roads and South Side area. So let me keep going. Tammy Schultz, awesome, yeah, you great. Thanks, you're welcome, Carlo. Yeah, and Scott as well, and anybody else, if you want to drop some comments or questions, post them in the chat. Post them in the chat. How do I let people know to post them in the chat? Post your questions in the chat. So let me go back to what I was mentioning before about what to do in the next 2 to 3 months as far as strategy goes. Okay, so what I would do if I'm buying a house right now and until the end of the month, or sorry, end of the season, I say September-ish time period, I would be vigilant to find the house that you like. I would be prepared to know that, okay, the house that might have gotten 10 offers in March might only get 3 in September or August, but know and be mentally prepared for the same dynamics as what happened back in March. Be prepared for that mentally. The reason I say that is because number one is when people are expecting the price to drop, they want to do, they think, well, now I've got all the negotiating chips, negotiating power. I've got all the leverage in my side. That is not correct. That is not correct. And so what happens is people think that, oh, the market's shifted, I'll just start negotiating down. You can get more houses under list price now than you ever could in the last 2 to 3 years. That is an absolute fact. But it does not mean that they all are like that. So if you come in with the same mindset of what you may have been prepared for in March, come in now. Don't offer 80,000 over asking price like a crazy person if you don't have to. Doesn't mean you maybe you have to sometimes. But my point is here that don't come in with guns a-blazing like that. But if the house has 3 offers, maybe 4 offers, think to yourself what the other people might be thinking. They might be thinking, hey, they might be trying to negotiate down. Or like, it's not that crazy of a market. I'm not going to be as aggressive. All you have to do is be just barely more aggressive than everybody else, and you get the house. So my mindset I would suggest is come in with that idea. Come in with the mindset of still be aggressive, even though it might feel uncomfortable knowing that the market might be telling you to just negotiate down. Because I will tell you, there will be houses that you will try to negotiate on and then lose the house because you're still not in a buyer's market. So I would definitely do that. And they're going to have a mixture of different prices of houses right now. You're going to have a mixture of people. There are going to be some people that will list their houses way more than they think than it should be listed for, because they're still testing to see what the market's going to do with their house. They're just not sure yet. So you're going to see some that are way overpriced. You're going to see some that are competitive or actually below what they probably should be listed at. Part of that is because the agent might be suggesting, hey, I don't know what this market's going to do. We need to be a bit more strategic as to how we list this house to make sure it sells quickly. So you'll have, to me, some of probably the widest gaps of pricing as you'll see probably any time in the last couple of years in the next few months, because you have such a wide variety of people as far as how they're processing this new market. So be ready for that. And this is where a good agent comes into play, because they can tell you which range of that, which price or which part of the spectrum the house you might like is. Is it priced too high? Is it priced too low? Checking comps can still help right now, but just be prepared for there to be still people that want the same house that you do, because the issue still is that there is still a supply problem. And because there is a supply problem, there is still going to be more buyers than sellers. We just have more particular buyers right now as opposed to March, when they would just buy whatever they could, because what else could you do? So anyway, let's see. Let's go to, I'll go back to adding more context there in a minute. But Scott, marry the property, date the rate. That's right. Well, hopefully that will end up being the case here if the rate does drop again. We'll see. I've seen this bubble burst before, and it was a great time to buy then. Should I wait while rates and prices are high at the same time? Great question. So question number one is this a bubble? I actually have no idea. I have no idea. Even when the market was going up in 6, 7, and 8, it kept going up even higher when people were thinking that the top had hit. So first of all, I struggle to think that this is a top or bottom because, like I showed you, every year the highest point of the market is always in June, July, or May, June, July, and it's always lowest at the end of the year. And so the market is going to drop. It will drop. The prices are going to drop about 5 to 15% this year. I can almost just almost not guarantee it, but it's probably going to happen. So if you say that the bubble, this year's bubble, is going to burst, hey, it's going to burst because the market's going to drop. The question then is, this question that Shelby's asking is, if that's your name, I'm not sure if that's your name, but which leads to another comment I have. What's going to happen in January, February, March, April, May, June of next year? That's when prices, generally speaking, always increase back up from the lows of the past year up to the highs of the next year. Even when the market was dropping, that was still the case. In 2008, 9, 10, 11, all those years. Let's go back and I'll if I can share it right now. But point is, even then that was the case. So we need to see what the highest high is next year. And I think we're going to see, I think it'll probably reach, if I was to guess, if I'm guessing right now, I think we drop down into the median price range of 330-ish, 325, 335 range in the south side, and about 10% less than that maybe in the peninsula. But I think it's going to bounce back up to maybe the 340s, 350s. I think it's going to do that. But yeah, should you wait while prices and rates are higher? Ask somebody in 2007 if the rates are high. To me, it still comes down to how long you're going to keep the house. If you're going to buy and hold, then I would probably just buy, and I would try and buy in the next 6 months. And if you're okay with waiting to see what the rates do, I would probably do that, because you're going to get a better deal in the next 6 months. You'll get a better deal. If you don't care about rate, you'll get a better price deal, I think, in October, November, December, is my opinion. But then it's a question of, do you want to gauge or play with that market dynamic? And that's where it's like, it's a personal thing. I'm not one to gamble on that. So I'm more into get the payment low now as much as possible. And if I can still refinance later, great. But that's just my own personal opinion. But I'm a little bit less risk averse when it comes to that stuff. So somebody else might be totally fine with that. I don't know if that answered your question. Hit yes or yes. No, let me know if I answered your question, but I can expound more. But with the current market normalizing, given the increasing, this is Carlo again, given the increasing interest rates, have you seen sellers paying for closing costs, or at least part of it? Oh my gosh, great question. Yes. So the answer number one is yes. I'm seeing it, or I'm seeing the idea of it. And what does that mean? I'm seeing prices drop. So a house that's 500, I've seen it sell for 490, 475, 480. But I mean, I've seen it drop, 25,000 or more. Depends on the house. But I've seen the house prices sell for less than asking price. Here's the part about the closing cost piece that I think is important. And this is a question I ask everybody if they want to try and get closing costs paid in their loan. When you're getting a house and you want closing costs paid for, what's actually happening is you've got the sales price of the house, and you've got the seller saying, I will give you X dollar amount, back to you for closing costs. What all that basically means is you're just getting a loan for those closing costs. So the question I ask people is, number one, do you want to get a loan for your closing costs? And number two, is the rate okay for you if you do want to do that? So you're basically financing your closing costs. Now, some people are still nervous about that in case the appraisals are going to come in lower. And that's one thing that I think is going to be interesting in the next few months to see. I think appraisals were always bumping up over the last couple of years. Like if you had a house that was 700,000 and you offered 750, I've seen that example of that house appraised for 775. There are differences here for every house, but the point is that in general, over the last few months to a couple of years, over asking price offers led to often over offer number appraisal values. So those appraisal guarantees were offered, but a lot of times they weren't needed. Well, the point being is that as the market might correct itself and then start to normalize, you'll start seeing more appraisals come in lower. And that the higher the chance or the concern that a seller might have with an appraisal coming lower increases the concern that they would have to pay closing costs. So that reason, plus the additional reason of actually having a financed amount of closing costs in your loan, leads me to think of the idea of, do you want that in your loan? And if you don't, then it might be a good idea to ask for a lower price number, but instead of asking for lower in lieu of that, don't ask for closing costs. Just ask for a lower price. So, like for example, I have a client that is getting a lower price, got a reduced number on the house. Well, we could have maybe then talked about the idea of rolling closing costs in, but then that's a loan amount. You're paying for that number. So I personally am not a fan of that unless you really need that. Because again, when you sell, you're still selling at that higher amount. You're still selling and have to then pay that money back. So I'm one to, unless you really need the loan, then I just personally would just pay my own. So that's a good point about that. And yeah, Shelby, yes, great. Wait till October. Good talk. Shelby, should we be offering money over appraisals and skipping inspections? Oh my gosh, great questions. They're all loaded questions though. So on one hand, offering money over appraisals and skipping inspections are still a thing. They can still happen. They happened 5 to 10 years ago. The skipping inspections and money over appraisals really comes down to the demand of that specific house. So the more demand that house is, it has the more likely that those criteria and other variables could be added or need to be added in order to have a more competitive offer. So in general, houses that you might have needed to do that with back in March or April or February, there's a greater chance that won't be needed now. But there are a lot of houses that will still need it. And so that's where, again, agent plays a big deal, as well as knowing how many offers and knowing, again, game theory, what you think other people are going to be doing, what other kind of offers you think are going to be coming in for that specific house makes a big difference. And it really impacts what what I would suggest and what you can expect for any type of house or offer on a house. So you're still seeing over appraisal offers. You're still seeing skipped inspections. I never am one to suggest skipping an inspection. I'm just telling you what sometimes people get, how they get offers accepted. Just got to put a disclaimer out there. But it does happen still, and it could continue for a while more than typical. But again, I just would say that I would take these strategies that you may have digested over the last few months and keep them in your quiver for the next few years. Because even in a market that turns, you can still use these strategies to beat somebody else that doesn't want to do a couple of the several variables in another type of market. And when you do include some of these things, it might again feel more strong or more aggressive than you might have wanted. But again, with a house that's competitive, you'll have the reps, you'll have the mindset, and you have learned the things that it takes to get a house that's competitive. So just keep these things in mind and keep these types of strategies ready. Roger, hey, hi Sam, thanks for your videos. You're welcome. I'm trying to move my family to Virginia Beach and will need to rent before purchasing. Is there a better time of the year for the availability of long-term leases? Great question. So not really. I mean, resale market, spring, summer is always going to be the most competitive, most active time and competitive. I would say in general, it's the same with rentals. You'll see a lot of times where people will try and plan their rentals out based on when they think there will be the most activity. And that's going to still be the same first half of the year. So if you can get something like in December or November, that's probably the best option for pricing. But, again, it's like, okay, how much of a deal can you get? Is it worth it? I don't know. So, but in general, the first half of the year in general, I would say is going to be more competitive and there's more availability. But again, in addition to the availability, there are also more people that want rentals. So you kind of have to weigh all that out, but in the meantime, you can maybe do a 6-month lease somewhere if you want to do that, short-term rental. And believe it or not, my cat wants to get out of the room, and bear with me, my cat wants out. Come on. Hey, come on. Sorry, my cat Henry got sick, and he's been laying next to me out for like 5 hours, and now he just got up, so he wants out. So anyway, talking about the market time. I'm sorry about that, but I'd say if you're going to do maybe a 6-month lease could work too. There are just fewer of those. But if you also want to pivot and you want to get something like off season, you can also do a seasonal rental that's cheaper. That might be, closer to a beach area, see what the prices are of that, but that could be another option as well. But yeah, I would say just same goes with like the rental as it goes with sales, is you're going to be talking about more competition in the spring, but more availability as well. So timing and speed will be a big deal. Great. Thanks. You're welcome, Shelby. Oh, the previous video you did of business and stores opening in various cities in Virginia Beach was very good. Thank you. Thanks, Oliver. Appreciate that. Yeah, that was a new one for me. I thought, you know what? I got to tell people about what's going on in the area beyond just the houses. Okay, if you're going to be moving here, what else is going on? And Nando's is going to be what's going on. If you have not heard of Nando's or been to Nando's yet, get ready, buckle up. It's coming. I love it. Favorite. Bayside area. You didn't mention it when talking about condos. Oh, yes, in townhouses in the 250 range. Why? No. So mixture, desirability. I mean, yeah, if you're going to be in the price range, there are some spots in there that would be totally fine. I blocked out that section in my mind. There are a couple spots, and again, it depends on if you do a condo. Remember, a condo that's $225, the condo fee, maybe if it's $250. That equivalent is like the equivalent of like a $260, $265, $270-ish a payment. So, you'll find some in the $230, $240 range condos in the Bayside area that I like a lot. Ridgely Manor, I think there are some in Ridgely Manor that are under $250. I think I could be wrong there, but 2 bedrooms. But yeah, there's some spots in there that would work. There are other spots that I would say just be aware of as far as demand goes. But there are spots in there that would be totally fine. And it depends on if you want school district ranking, that's a priority thing too. That might change what you decide to do, as well as proximity to other things as well. But yeah, Roger, yeah, thanks so much. You're welcome. How is the Hampton Roads market in regards to VA-backed buyers? Well, in general, this area has a plethora of VA buyers. So as far as people that have VA eligibility that buy, there are a lot. So in general, that usually leads to a more positive, if that's the right word. They're more encouraged or more welcomed. VA buyers are more welcomed. That's even a weird way to say it. Or offers are more welcomed with VA loans because there's so many of them. Now, again, that does not mean that they're always the easiest to get offers accepted with, obviously, because of the things that you probably know about. The condition of the house has to be a certain condition. Appraisals are a bit stricter. The valuation, all that stuff is stricter. Sometimes VA buyers don't have as much money in reserves, which is why they use the VA loan in general, because it's 0% down, all that stuff. But in general, it's not a cinch, but people are aware that VA is a very common thing here, so it makes it a little bit easier. Isaiah, can you discuss the rest of your presentation? Where can you still get a good value regardless of the market in Hampton Roads? Yes. Oh, Isaiah, thank you for keeping me on track. Isaiah. I'm going to throw in my map right now. I'm so glad that you keep me accountable. So the spots, and I've mentioned this in other videos before. I'm going to go back to the map and share my screen. So here is the aerial view of the whole area. So number one, I will continue to beat the drum of Western Branch. Western Branch is not appreciated as much. It's only appreciated about, I think, 25%, as opposed to like maybe 30, 35, 40% in Virginia Beach in the last couple of years. But this area is coming. There's still growth to be had here because this is where the land options are to build, and this is where newer things are coming up. New construction is being built. So it's a small area. It's near Portsmouth on this northwest side, but you can get the same house in Western Branch. I say a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house for the low 400s that you have to pay upper 4s, maybe 5, and a lot of times in Virginia Beach for the same house. So Western Branch, anywhere near the 664 corridor, Western Branch North, Western Branch South. This is Portsmouth Boulevard all the way through. And there's some new construction I mentioned as well that is just off of Nansman Parkway that I like a lot as well. That's one of my favorite spots for new construction. The Amazon distribution center is right below here as well. There's some new coffee shop I like in here. Gather, it's newer in the last 3 years or so. This is, I call it Greenbrier Light, which is basically the equivalent of what Greenbrier is in the southeastern part of Chesapeake near Virginia Beach. Just, there's a mall, stores, big box stuff, not a lot of mom and pop stuff, but this area just has a self-sustaining element to it, and you can get a lot of house for the money, more than what you can get just about anywhere else for the same price for housing. Now, that being said, there are a lot of houses in the 50s and 60s that are in here, and then there is also a lot more new construction in here that will, you can't find as much new construction in the 5s, 6s, and even low 7s in Virginia Beach as you can in Western Branch. So that's why I like that as well, including Northeast Suffolk as well. So I like this whole corridor. You probably heard me talk about that before. The reason why, and if you see on the map, like for example, if you're going to the Coast Guard, you're stationed at the Coast Guard over in Portsmouth, right? You look at the Northeastern Suffolk, Western Branch area, and you say, okay, well, I'll look at Western Branch. Well, okay, Western Branch and Portsmouth are right next to each other. They look exactly, I say, very similar to each other as well. So if you're driving from one part to the other, look at Portsmouth. Portsmouth, there's a line in Portsmouth right there. Western Branch and Portsmouth are right next. So if you drive in from one to the other, you could easily not realize you're in Portsmouth or not realize you just drove into Virginia or in Western Branch. Eventually, you'll notice a change, but not that much right away. So my point is that you'll find some spots in Portsmouth that are awesome neighborhoods. Awesome, guys. Let's just throw in like near Hatton Point. Love near Hatton Point for the price. Let's drop in here like $275. There's nothing fancy. I'm not trying to tell you this is like, these are, these houses in Virginia Beach that would be $380 to $425. You can get these same houses for $325, $275. Now, but here's the problem. Problem with Portsmouth is that the resale value or the prices are suppressed often because of taxes. So Portsmouth taxes are about 30% higher for every $1,000 in assessed value compared to Virginia Beach, or I guess even Norfolk or Chesapeake. So you're paying more in taxes for the same house. So you'll see more houses that are sold at or less than assessed value. Not appraised value, assessed value, what the city uses to value. So you're going to see lower prices in Portsmouth. If you're okay with that, okay with the higher taxes, still a lower payment, better house for the same price anywhere else, you can do well in Portsmouth. Because I love Portsmouth. But again, I have to tell people, hey, look, just be ready for the taxes. Be ready for less calls if you sell your house, less showings, less all that, because it's just there's just less in Portsmouth. So if you have to be there, though, it's a great spot to get a cheap house, especially if you're going to keep it for a long period of time. But again, alternatively, pivoting to Western Branch, Northeast Suffolk is a great general spot to focus on. That was me answering your question. Yeah, okay. So to continue, I want to mention also going north into Newport News and Hampton. I like there's some more risk here as far as potential upward mobility for value, but I do like the potential of Buckrow Beach and Phoebus. But for the prices, it's hard to beat. You can get houses in the 2s pretty regularly in and around here, in 3s. Then, as you go up on the beach, though, it's going to be 4, 5, 6 and up. But, you can get close to the beach access for $200,000 to $300,000. But, I could see some growth. Phoebus is growing. There are new restaurants happening in and around the central section of County Street, Mallory Street, all in here. So I would check that out as well if you're looking on the peninsula side, closer to Langley. Another part I want to mention that is expensive relative to the areas around there, but I still think for the demand of the area, I like it a lot, is still going to be York County, South York County, and Tab near Grafton, because of the high schools, because of the demand of the school district. You're going to get houses in here in the 5s and 6s usually, but for 5s and 6s, you can get, nice house, but the school district is great. And also the demand of the school district means higher demand for when you sell, if you have to sell. So I love the Grafton and Tab area for that reason. And moving forward north, I still love, I love Ford's Colony. I don't like all the houses in Ford's Colony, but I like Ford's Colony a lot. If you're going to be in the 7 to 8 to 9 range and over $1 million, I love it. As far as all of the larger neighborhoods in that section, Ford's Colony to me is the best. And even if you go into the 1.5 and up range, and I'm sure that's not maybe what you're asking about for pricing, but the idea here is that in all the price ranges, I like Ford's Colony a lot. Um, and then again, same goes with I love if you have to stay in the peninsula and want to be closer to like the base, Langley, Fort Eustis. Loving the west side of Newport News, still digging that. I still think that there's some value to be had in there. Hilton is a great neighborhood that has some good value there. So I like the western part of Newport News as well. Now, and separate from all that, Virginia Beach, I think, pricing wise, I love the city for resale value, but I get it. It's going to be, you're going to be talking 5, 6, and 7 in a lot of places now. You'll still see some in the 4s and 5s, which is why I like pivoting over to Salem, going over to Kempsville area near Lake James, Lake Christopher in the 4s to 6s. I like Little Neck, of course, in the 5, 6 range if you can get houses in there, because the further north you go, the houses prices go up into the 8s and 9s and $1 million plus. So if you can get in the 5, 6, 7 range in Little Neck, you're doing great as well. So I'm kind of throwing some stuff at you, but there are a lot of little pockets of value that I think will always be best suited. But I just am not as big a fan of getting too close to the Naval Air Station. This is the time where when people are a bit more particular about where they're buying, and so if you stick to the demand spots and stick to the demand spots in certain areas, neighborhoods, and go away from maybe the things that might be on the masses less in demand. So if you're not thinking of a good example right now, but think to yourself, like, if I'm buying this house, am I the only one that likes this kind of thing that I'm buying? If it is, then there's a good chance that you might be having a hard time selling it. So just those types of things you're thinking about now, those are the things that if you do have to sell later and the market has shifted or normalized, these are the things that buying now with those things in mind can help a lot and preserve that value and not be as difficult to sell the house later if and when you have to. Carlo, am I still showing you the map of Portsmouth? The answer is yes, and I need to get rid of that. There we go. Is a conventional loan still the preferred loan by sellers versus FHA and or VA? Number one, the answer is yes, because number one is most people that are in conventional have usually more assets, more money down, and the loan type is not as strict for condition and valuation, which is talked about before with VA. So yes, the answer is yes. Depending on the house, it might not matter. I've seen many, many, many times where work with many clients that got a house that had a VA loan, beat out with the conventional, not really worried about that, but it depends on what kind of other things you have to offer to offset the demand of the conventional over your VA, if there is a competition for the house that you're going after. But I would say just be prepared and even check with the lender about both. Like, what are the differences? Like, hey, if I go do VA, how much better will it be compared to conventional? I've seen people just do conventional just because it worked out better for them. So I would talk to the lender about that. How do you feel about Harborview area? Ray, love it. Love Harborview. Love Harborview. So going back to the map, if I can share it one more time with you. The map, I love Harborview. Harborview, for anybody who doesn't know, it's this the northeast Suffolk area specifically, but anywhere near the riverfront golf course, I love. I have clients that live in here. I love this area. You're going to see houses in the 5, 6s, and 7s to start usually, but near the water, 8s and up, well over $1 million if you go on the water, but obviously, I love this area. It's close to a lot of stuff that you like, essentials. The one thing about Harborview I just don't like is that it still feels like you're immersed in what's local to there, but it's still not huge. It still feels like right as you leave Harborview Boulevard, you still kind of feel like you're in the country a little bit. But it's kind of an illusion because you got your essentials nearby, and you also have the 664 nearby. I have friends that I spent a lot of time in Northeast Suffolk, and I was living in Virginia Beach in Chesapeake. And it didn't bother me because you're not that far away to me. I'm just being used to it. But I love Harborview. And I love the fact that you can be in Harborview and also go across 664, excuse me, the other way, the hiccups, the other way to Newport News and up towards Langley and up towards Fort Eustis. Love that too. Drawback would be the tunnel. Tunnel traffic can still be a real big pain, but it does help to be that close to the tunnel, so you're not really waiting as long. And I've seen some of the tunnel backups can be miles. I've been stuck in those. Those stink. So talk more about houses in Buckrow Beach that can be purchased for rental. So yeah, go back to the map one more time. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you go right to the edge of Buckrow Beach, you'll find beach houses that have been like the 4, 5, 6, 8 million, 1.2, 1.3. If you bump up just a little bit, bump back a little bit, between 2 and 300,000, you can get some in like the 5th, 6th Street range. I'm spitballing. I'm not doing this just off the top of my head, but about 4 or 5 blocks back, you can get houses in the $200,000-300,000 range. But if you can get something even off of Mallory and closer to 2nd Street in the 4, 5, 6 range, those are still great ones to Airbnb because you can also, I mean, access that close to the beach is very hard to find that you can walk to it, except for maybe Ocean View. But you can get a bigger house for the price over near Buckrow Beach. But yeah, I mean, you'll find pockets that might not seem as nice. And it's a very beachy corner and some bungalow style, some Cape Cod style, just older houses in here. But yeah, anything right off the coast here. And even as you go further away, closer to Phoebus, you might be able to do as well. That didn't sound right. But yeah, it's right now, it does not seem like it's too saturated yet. Now, again, there aren't as many people that go to Buckrow Beach compared to Ocean View, or even many compared to the ocean front of Virginia Beach. But I'd say if you're wanting flexibility of price range, that might be a spot. $200,000-300,000 could work fine. But again, like there will be some there in the 3, 4, 5 range that I think would be fine as well. Yeah, and thank you, Isaiah. Yes, you're very welcome, Isaiah. And yeah, if you've got any other questions, please let me know. We're going past an hour now, so I know if anybody drop some comments below, I'm fine to keep rolling. We've got nice full chat. I will sit here and drink my Spindrift. Anybody had a Spindrift before? That's what I'm drinking tonight. It's a fruit soda. It's not a soda. It's just fruit juice sparkling water with real fruit in it, is what they tell me. And I love it. I love it. It's hard to find good drinks that don't jack up the system. So anybody have questions? I can keep going for a little while. If you have anything, I can keep going about maps. You want me to talk about more about the stats? I can show you some more stats. Let's go back. Go back to no. Okay. Anybody want to talk? I can sign off now if anybody has any more questions, because we are over an hour. So I just don't want to leave without making sure everybody has their question answered. So if you have one, feel free to throw it right now in the comments. I will continue to stay here if you got a couple more, and just let me know if you're going to drop one in the section. But and I'll still stick around for a couple of minutes, and I can sing for you if you like as well. You want me to sing for you? You don't want me to sing for you. How are the prices near Pungo? Oh, good question. I'm doing a video about Pungo pretty soon. Rhea, I hope you're saying thank you for the video, not for me singing, because I'm not a good singer. And so you'll know that if I do sing for you. You're very welcome, Ray. You're very welcome, Tammy. But prices in Pungo, great question. I'm doing a video about Pungo actually in about 2 weeks. So you'll be seeing that coming up pretty soon. I've almost got it finished. But I'm going to show the map one more time for those that don't know where Pungo is. Pungo is the peninsula down this corner down here. And you notice my arrow is really small. I'm trying to help you can see where this is. But all right through, this is Princess Anne Road and Indian River Road right here. This is kind of the top of it. This whole section here is what Pungo is. And you can get houses in there anywhere from like the 300 and 400 range. Most of them are going to be between 5 and 8, 450 and 750-ish. 5 to 650 is probably the meat of it. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. So it depends on what you want. But I would say that even with that, like say if you get a house for $500,000, $600,000, the payment will be higher than what a typical $500,000 or $600,000 house is going to be, because of that flood insurance that will likely happen on the coast of the Pungo. For example, near West Neck Creek on this side, or on the east side over near the Ships Bay or Back Bay. So the closer you get to those sides, the more likely you'll find houses that need flood insurance. There are fewer houses on that side, other sides as well in general. But again, just keep in mind that is part of the reason why. But you'll see a lot that need flood insurance on those edges. But that's to answer your question. That's the price range. Listing anything good? Yeah, I was listing coming up in Norfolk. Ran one coming up in just went up in the market, and then actually just went on a contract in Portsmouth, which is I'm super excited about. Another one we're talking about listing in Virginia Beach or Chesapeake, right near the border. And so they're kind of scattered, and so there'll be a couple of others that will likely come up later on as well. Northeast Suffolk is a good as a spot that will be coming up. So for me, you notice it's all over the place because I go from anywhere from the border, Virginia Beach and North Carolina, all the way through Williamsburg, which is on the north side, about an hour and 20 minutes, passing the Lightfoot, Tawano, and West Point, which we mentioned earlier, into New Kent. This whole area of Providence, Forge, I've been up there as well. So anything through there. I'm actually going to be looking into getting a license in North Carolina as well, which would include then the rest of this northeastern section of North Carolina as well. So that is on the horizon, I think. So we'll see when that happens. But thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Shelby. Thank you for your comments. And Isaiah, thank you as well. And guys, if you have any more questions, I do this. I help people relocate all the time. So if you have any questions at all, if you want to help me, I'm going to help you relocate to this area. Need advice on doing it? You could be, anything, any price range. I can give you as many pointers as I can. But my goal is to help you relocate here and give you the most pleasant experience to transition here, because this area is so unique compared to what you might be used to from where you're coming from. So if you have any questions, please reach out. I have my contact information I'll have in the description, or any of my videos, my email address as well. You can email me, you can call me, you can text me, and I'll do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you, as always, on the next video.